Governor Murphy reversed his decision on the bear hunt. What is your stance on keeping it or ending the bear hunt? Okay.
Thank you. Well, let me just be clear. I would end the bear hunt. Right? I would end the bear hunt. I think it's inhumane. I think there are so many other things that we could do, and certainly I'm against it. And my 4-year-old and 7-year-old will be thrilled that I just made that clear statement. But I do want to just take a moment also, and because that I think is just a definitive answer. I do want to take a moment to the previous question about how we win in November. And I think it's important that as we're talking about the message, it's also important to look at the messenger. Because when we look at these issues and we say we're going to focus on folks, well, it starts with listening to folks. It starts with listening to folks. And understanding that, I say it as a committee person for many years and serving, that when we go out and we hear their message, we bring it back and say, hey, party, this is what we want to see. Because we have to acknowledge that part of the challenge, and Andy was onto this, part of the challenge is why 600,000 more people stayed home, is because people get sick and tired. They get sick and tired of saying, wait a minute, I'm talking about this issue, I'm talking about that issue. But the people over here, right, the politically connected, the politically powerful, the ultra-rich, they came out and said, well, here you go. Here's your candidate again. Go put out those lawn signs, go knock on those doors. And we're surprised that we just can't get that energy. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about what I'm hearing from folks. Making New Jersey more affordable, attacking the issue of high cost of housing, making sure we've got more availability, making sure we've got quality early education and childcare, so I know what the costs are for our kids and I know how much of a challenge that is. Improving the outcomes for healthcare and bringing down those costs. Making sure we're focusing on those issues that are important to folks and that will drive folks out, but also understanding that it matters who says it. It matters that you believe in that person, that you believe that that is what they're truly going to fight for. Because if it's somebody that is, again, taking the same dollars that we see from those very wealthy and very powerful at the national level and doing it here at the state level, if it's somebody that the bosses have just picked and said, this is who your person's going to be, how much confidence do we have that they're going to fight for us in every decision that they make? It matters. It matters what we do right now. The fate of our country depends on it. And we're all counting on each other to make the right choices. Thank you. No, I think I was pretty clear on that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I think my track record in Jersey City and part of this campaign speaks to advocating for the most vulnerables. And I would classify our furry friends and pets and bears and all of those as people without a voice, and you need to think a little bit about that. During a campaign, people come up to you and they'll say, I'm for this, I'm for this, I'm for this, I'm for this. And sometimes it rings hollow because you're like, hey, they're in a campaign, they're gonna say anything to pander to me in order to garner my vote. It's one of the reasons why I try to be very specific and outline all the things that I've done for a long time on a specific issue, good and bad. With regards to the bear hunt, for 10 years, I stood with the League of Humane Voters side by side advocating for the governor, both Christie and then Murphy, to take a different course. I've been vocal about that when nobody was looking. I made a commitment that we would go back to the John Corzine era where we ban it properly. Now my record with regards to animals in Jersey City is really, I would argue, second to none. I mean, we've hired more animal control officers, we've deputized police officers to interact and make sure animal abuse doesn't happen in widespread. We, for the first time, started our own municipal shelter to drive down deaths in the shelter and make sure we increase adoptions. So with the question with regards to the bears and how we interact with pets overall, I'm proud to have the endorsement of the largest animal advocacy group in the state of New Jersey, the League of Humane Voters. And I take that as a badge of honor because I've been working side by side with them for 10 plus years. So thank you. I hope
Thank you. And I think I'll be a little bit different than everyone up here on this issue. I believe in the science. And when the science says that you need to thin the herd, then you need to thin the herd. I'm not gonna yell and holler. I'm gonna give you an honest answer. You might not like my answer. Everyone else is gonna tell you what you want to hear. I'm gonna tell you what I think. Based on the science, those decisions have to be made. The bear hunt was banned in 1973 because they were almost extinct. It was wrong. They were wiping out a species. Well, we start running into problems with bears, and people say that didn't happen. It's not true. They were more and more interacting because people weren't responsible for the way they got rid of their waste, especially in the Northwest, in the mountains. We had a Rutgers, I think it was a student, that was mauled to death in a park. So I believe we protect animals. We absolutely protect animals, but you have to manage it too. You really do. It's just like deer. Look, every time we bring up and build new buildings and we clear out open spaces and we put houses up, you know, the deer didn't go away. You know how many hundreds and thousands of deer we hit a year? I know in Gloucester County because we used to have to collect them because the state stopped picking them up. We were picking up almost 1,000 deer a year that were hitting, where cars were hitting people. So look, we live in a very densely populated state, and you have to try to manage things. So I'm the one that says I believe in the science. That's all.
So I want to add my 2 cents to this. Honestly, I agree on the one hand that we have to protect our communities, our residents, that when we build, that it affects our communities. It affects open space, it affects the habitat of bears, of deer, so forth and so on. We also don't believe that we should be arbitrarily and randomly shooting animals, right? I think that ultimately people have to have a smarter and more collaborative discussion about how we deal with a problem and not have a knee-jerk reaction right away. That's what usually happens. You have folks in Trenton who don't talk to anybody else, who make decisions on their own about how problems should be solved in communities they've never been to. And so it's important for us to sit down with folks in a community and come up with a humane way to deal with these problems. I've been all the way in Bergen County to the places that Steve is talking about, where folks come outside and have 30 deer on their lawn, or that people are having accidents because deer jump on their cars. There's very real problems for folks like that. But what the state says is, you can hire people in your community to shoot these deer. We'll give you a license to go and shoot deer. Well, none of these people want to do that, right? They want to figure out another way to solve this problem. I think we're smart enough to do that. And to have a fight about this, whether we build housing or whether we kill animals, I think we're smart enough to figure this out. And so I want to weigh in on that. But I also want to say, I am concerned about the killing of bear, but I'm also concerned about the killing of my children in communities up and down in our cities who are dying in the street, right, from senseless violence because of the lack of gun control and because of the lack of resources in these communities. I'm also concerned about families, about mothers who are dying in hospitals trying to give birth to children because the health inequities are so absurd. African American women die 7 times more than everybody else. I'm also concerned about little black children who are dying 3 times more than everybody else before they turn to age 1 in hospitals that are not providing adequate and equitable health care. I'm concerned about families who are getting crushed because somebody in their household is getting sick and we can't pay health care because we're afraid to talk about public options. We're afraid to talk about Medicare for all. That's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that we are so monolithic and so narrow-minded in our view about whatever it is that we believe individually, that we don't have room to talk about us as a community in New Jersey. You know why? Want to know why we're losing? Because our individual issue is more important than our collective problem. Because in these In these parties up and down, these conventions and parties up and down the state, people are more concerned about preserving their individual position than they are concerned about our collective well-being as Democrats in this state. We don't have to flip Republicans in New Jersey. There's enough of us to win elections without them.
Anyone else?
Just to add one point, I think the mayor was totally right about the fact that we can figure these things out if you actually sit down and talk to each other, right? Nothing's all or nothing. I think too often now in our politics, we decide we got to do one thing or the other thing versus actually trying to sit down and talk to one another and figure it out. You know, when I've learned one thing in Congress over these years, I've run this group called the Problem Solvers Caucus. It's a bipartisan group. We sit down and talk to each other. And people say, you can't solve some of these things. It's impossible. You can't get a bipartisan gun safety bill done. But amazingly, we did. The first in 30 years by actually talking to one another. And by the way, we got Republicans, not just Democrats, to support it to make our schools safer, our communities safer, and make sure our children are safe. Right? We did the same thing on the infrastructure bill, which people said, you could never get an infrastructure bill. Trump tried for 4 years to get an infrastructure bill done in his first term. Couldn't get it done. It took us working together to get it done. I was very happy to help write that and pass it and negotiate it. Right? And now it's fixing our roads and our bridges and our mass transit systems and building the train tunnel between New York and New Jersey. The same way we expanded the child tax credit to help pay for child care. With the second most expensive child care in the country. It's ridiculous. People can't afford it. And we have to do the same thing to make housing more affordable for people, right? By getting not just property taxes down, but giving people rental rebates to help them pay for these costs, because rents are up 33% in the last few years. It's killing people, right? We need to solve these problems, and it's not just yelling at one another to do it. We actually have to work together, right? And actually put Jersey ahead of everything else and get it done, and we can. All these problems, if we work together, are solvable. You got to take them on and not be afraid to take them on. Thank you.
I guess since I was the only one that hadn't spoken, I should speak up on it. I'm happy to listen to the science. I'm happy to hear from the community and weigh in on this. But I'm struggling with this because I've been receiving calls today about what I think of as kind of the demise of our government. A friend's daughter fired from the CDC after being asked if she was MAGA, and if so, how long she had been MAGA. Planes grounded across the nation because we don't have enough air traffic controllers. An unelected billionaire with access to Treasury. So as we think of flying back money here in New Jersey, he has everyone's data. That is he going to just rip it out of your bank account? I don't know. So that's why I'm running for governor of New Jersey, because we need strong executives. We need people who are going to take the reins and come up with a vision going forward. I'm hearing in Trenton that people have lead in their soil, and I'll tell you, when I first came into Congress, Dan Kildee, who is the congressman from Flint, was telling me about how when government doesn't handle these things, how many children are put at risk, not just when they're children, but for their entire life. He now has a foundation trying to remediate this and take care of them. I'm going around this state and hearing from people who are not sure how they're going to make their next mortgage payment or their next rental payment, how they're going to stay in their home, how they're going to stay in New Jersey. I'm really troubled because as we're sitting here as Democrats and we're promising ourselves that we're going to handle the issues that people are coming to us with, this is not what people are coming to me to talk about. When they don't know if they can stay in their house, or they don't know if their children have lead poisoning, or they don't know if the United States of America is still going to be a democracy. So I'd like to talk about that tonight at
So I'm going to ask the candidates, I'm going to give you